NetsBoy, so let's hear what he has to say. His name is NetsBoy, he thinks the world is all over when the Nets just can't play.
What up, Net fans? NetsBoy here, bring your latest in your Brooklyn Nets news. All right, what do I always say? Let's go. Let's dive right in because we've got a lot to talk about in these last couple games for the Nets. So, since my last NetsBoy episode, I was hoping that the Nets would go 3-1, and of course they did not. They ended up going 2-2, which puts their record at 4-4, and really not where I think any Net fans really thought or want the Nets to be at this point. But as I've touched upon in previous episodes, season is still very young. And, to me, once we get to around the 20-game mark, so we've still got 12 more games before I would really start saying whether or not I think this Nets team should start panicking or anything like that. But with that being said, we do have a bit to address after things that we've seen these last couple of games. So let's start off with the first game against the Hawks. The Hawks coming into this game, I believe, are 5-1 or something along those lines. They looked like a really good team, or 4-1. They looked like a playoff team, and they had a lot of things going for them. And I was nervous. And if you remember, I said they might lose one of those two games against the Hawks. Well, the first game against the Hawks was just no defense at all by either teams. It was a ridiculous game. It was a close game. The Nets ended up winning, I think, 145-141 or something like that. It was just one of those games where both teams just couldn't miss, but there was zero defense. And it was fun, and it was back and forth, and the Nets managed to hold on to win, getting good performances by, of course, Kevin Durant. They were able to, like I said, overcome a lack of defensive performance. The next time they played the Hawks, similar performance by the Nets defensively, but not as much offensively. And the Hawks just outplayed the Nets that game. Look. This Nets team, this defense, we all know what the issues are with this Nets team. Defense and offensive rebounding. And when I say offensive rebounding, I mean allowing teams to get the offensive rebound. Their offensive rebounding is okay, but so to be technical, that means their defensive rebounding. So their defensive rebounding and their defense are the two major flaws of this Nets team, and it was very evident in that loss against the Hawks. They just couldn't do anything. The whole team kind of struggled. There was just nothing good to take away from that game. But, like I said, the Hawks are a dangerous team. So I'm like, all right, I was afraid that they might lose one of the two games against the Hawks. I'll take that. But, hey, they got the Wizards. The Wizards, a team that's struggling. They haven't been able to figure it out with their new backcourt of Beal and Westbrook. We know the Wizards should be good based on what we've seen on paper. But coming into this game, they were 1-5. So I'm thinking, like everyone's thinking, Nets are going to win this game. There were so many issues with that game. And obviously the big takeaway is what everyone's talking about, how both Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant had a chance to not only make the game-winning shots for the Nets, but, well, they both missed. That's what I'm trying to say. There is no but, really. But they both missed. They both had chances to make the game-winning shots. Kyrie takes a classic Kyrie 3, step-back 3, which is his shot, misses that. Kevin Durant gets the offensive rebound, gets right to his spot, gets to his mid-range open shot, and, of course, he misses, and the Nets actually lose. And it's just one of those things. And, of course, all the Nets haters, popped out of nowhere. Well, actually, I can't say out of nowhere because there are going to be a lot of Nets haters. Let's be honest, the Nets are expected to be one of the better teams in the league, and there's always going to be haters when you're good. But immediately, they all started going out, oh, remember when Kyrie Irving said that? Oh, man, that guy over there, I finally got someone who can make that shot. Because Kevin Durant not only missed that wide-open shot against the Wizards, if you recall, he missed a game-winning shot against the Hornets early on in the year. And a lot of people now are saying, Kevin Durant, he's not as good as he once was. He's not clutch, blah, blah, this. Kyrie doesn't know what he's talking about, blah, blah, blah. The Nets are the most overrated team in the world. They can't play defense. They can't get any rebounds. They can't do anything good. They're going to end up making the playoffs as a 7-6 seed and be mediocre and lose in the second round at best. That's what everyone's saying now. And look, to me, the issues with that Wizards game was the same issues as Nets teams always had. They didn't play defense, and of course, they couldn't get any rebounds. And I've talked about it several times in other NetsBoy episodes. What's the point of having DeAndre Jordan if your team is struggling with interior defense and rebounds? And, it's very frustrating. And Karis LeVert, by the way, also has played like crap during those stretch of games. And that's another factor. So out of nowhere now, you start pining for the days of Spencer Dinwiddie. I know I was, because I'm like, oh crap, if Spencer was still playing, maybe he would be helping on at least the defensive side of things. I can't say he'd make a big difference with their rebounding, but he's not a terrible rebounder for a guard. But he was a pretty decent defender and had been playing good defense prior to his knee injury. So all of a sudden you're like, oh my God. Like, maybe the Nets not having Dinwiddie really is going to affect this team because they can't play any defense. And yes, look, I can't get frustrated with Durant and Kyrie missing those shots against the Wizards. You don't make every game-winning shot. Yes, this is the second time that Durant has missed a game winner. Yes, this is why you bring in those stars to make those shots. But like I said, I don't blame them. I'm not going to start, saying they're not clutch or anything like that. I'm just more frustrated what I've seen from the other guys on this Nets team. Every game, it seems like it's just Kyrie and KD carrying the team, and occasionally someone else might do something small, except for Jarrett Allen. Jarrett Allen's been the only other player that I have said consistently has looked good. And Joe Harris a bit too, because Joe Harris has been able to knock down some shots and make some plays. But outside of those four guys, everyone else just kind of seems irrelevant. And that's the problem, because those irrelevant guys can't be irrelevant if this team is to be one of the best teams in the NBA. So I was just frustrated like everyone else. I said, I cannot believe they lost to the Wizards, a team that's struggling and all this good stuff. And then the news broke about Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant to be out for at least 7 days in quarantine after he was exposed to someone with COVID, as per league protocols. And now you're thinking to yourself, this is a disaster. Not only is this team struggling, at this point they're 3-4. How are they going to play when their best player, and Kevin Durant still is their best player, despite missing game-winning shots, how are they going to perform? And I'm just thinking, like everyone's thinking, I'm like, this is going to be a disaster. And because the Utah Jazz now are coming to play. And the Utah Jazz at this point, we're 4-2, and we're one of the better teams in the Western Conference. They're a perennial playoff team. They've made the playoffs the last 4 seasons in the Western Conference. So they're a team that you're like, this is going to be bad. But then something amazing happened. Steve Nash became a coach. Steve Nash said, I'm the head coach. I got to do something. And it was Steve Nash who said, let me just mix and change everything up. Let's take our best defensive players that we have and put them in the starting lineup with our best offensive player that we'll be able to play with in Kyrie Irving, because we don't have Kevin Durant. I'm telling you right now, I'm excited to see what's going to happen the next couple games with this lineup change, because obviously without Durant, you're going to see it for the next 3 or 4 games. Starting Bruce Brown, which, by the way, just starting Bruce Brown to me was the right move. Bruce Brown is that tough, rugged, hard-nosed, grit and grind type of player that the Nets needed. He does the dirty work. He reminds me a lot of what David Nwaba was last year. Remember, before David Nwaba got hurt with the Achilles injury, he was everything the Nets needed. He was energy, he was defense, he was toughness, he was rebounding, and he was actually shooting over 40% from 3, which was a shock. Now, Bruce Brown doesn't have that type of pedigree of shooting the 3 ball, but everything else about him, athleticism, defensive toughness, rebounding, he has that. So right off the bat, great job by Steve Nash putting Bruce Brown in. I love that. But then he goes with Taurean Prince, which we all know I'm not a big Taurean Prince fan. However, the one thing I do believe Taurean Prince is pretty decent at is defense, though he could be a little bit better. But, he can be a very good defensive player. Then he goes with Jeff Green. I mean, I can't go out there and say Jeff Green is a good defensive player, but he's not a bad one. But then, the most important thing that Steve Nash did was he finally started Jared Allen. Oh, thank goodness, God gracious. Finally, he started Jared Allen. And you want to know something? It paid off because Jared Allen ended up with 19 points and 18 rebounds. And that, to me, is not a coincidence. You start Jared Allen, you play him 30 minutes a game, he is going to be a double-double machine. He's going to give you great interior help defense with his shot-blocking ability. He's going to get you rebounds. He's going to provide energy. And sure enough, we saw it. And this lineup, with the starters being all defensive except Kyrie, and having the second unit being the firepower in Karis LeVert, Joe Harris, Timothy Luwawu-Cabarrot, and those guys being anchored by the rebounding and defensive guy of DeAndre Jordan coming off the bench, just was amazing. And that Jazz game was one of the most impressive performances I've seen by this Nets team. Because, and you want to know something about that game? That was the best win of the year, the most impressive win of the year. Not just because Kevin Durant didn't play and they still blew out the Jazz, but because they played defense. You look at the games, the blowouts against the Warriors and the Celtics. Yes, they played decent defense there, but really it was just an offensive juggernaut. But this time it was everything. They were knocking down shots, they were making the right plays, but they were playing defense. And they were like a plus 12 or 10, something like that on the boards, meaning they were getting rebounds. And this is a team, by the way, this Jazz team, that supposedly has one of the best bigs in the game in Rudy Gobert. And Jared Allen completely outplayed Rudy Gobert, including had 2 great blocks on him. So this, to me, was the pivotal. Jared Allen is the guy you need to continue to roll with in the starting lineup moment for the Nets. And keep Bruce Brown out there. I don't really think Joe Harris should be coming off the bench, but I do not mind Bruce Brown and Jared Allen. I think Joe Harris should still be a starter. I still think that would work better. But once again, what Steve Nash did was put his best defensive players out there to stop the first starting unit, and then bam, 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 put the bench in with the offensive firepower. And Karis LeVert finally showed up. He started off slow, but really got it together in the second quarter and in the second half. Ended up with 24 points and I think like 7 or 8 assists, and was what we were hoping he would be. And up to this point, like I said, LeVert is the key to this Nets team. LeVert is the key to this team being able to just simply, perform at a high level, because especially now, without Kevin Durant, they need more offense, and it's going to be LeVert, who is the third best player on this Nets team, and he has to continue to play that way. So I couldn't have been happier about what I saw from the Nets in that Jazz game. The question is, will they be able to sustain that moving forward? And then when Kevin Durant comes back, what exactly will they do? But I love Bruce Brown. I hope the Nets continue. I hope he's a permanent player in the starting lineup. And I do like that the player that Nash took out of the rotation was Landry Shamet. And look, I'm not a huge Shamet fan, but I was pleased and happy when the Nets traded for Shamet, because I thought he was going to be a really good role player on this team. But he just simply has not been performing up to this point. And I think inserting Bruce Brown into the rotation was a great move. And when Durant comes back, we'll see who's the next guy who's not going to play. But personally, I think it should be Taurean Prince. But we don't know. But I hope it's not Bruce Brown, because he deserves to be in that lineup. Good things happen when Bruce Brown's on the court. He does all the little things. So we'll see what happens, though, the next couple games, and we'll see what happens when Kevin Durant comes back. Now, next couple games, let's talk about that, because we've got some interesting games. Starting with what is going to be considered probably the biggest and toughest game of the Nets for the Nets in this early season. The 76ers are currently the best team in the NBA. They have the best record. They look like a legitimate Eastern Conference championship type of team. Joel Embiid has played well. Everybody has been playing well. And, Ben Simmons playing well. They're getting great performance from Tobias Harris. The role players that they've picked up in Green and Seth Curry have been amazing. So at the end of the day, it's going to be a tough game for the Nets. We know that. And the only thing the Nets really have going for them, because remember, once again, they don't have Kevin Durant. The only thing the Nets really have going for them is the fact that the 76ers are coming off a second day of a back-to-back. So they might be a little tired. Maybe they'll be resting Embiid. I hope they'll be resting Embiid because he always seems to have his way with Jared Allen. And now I think Jared Allen's going to be the starter. Could be frustrating. But we'll see. So that's the only thing I feel like the Nets got going for them. That and the fact that they seem like they're riding high and figuring it out. So that's going to be a tough game. As of right now, I don't know if they're resting Embiid or resting anyone. I'm going to chalk this up to a loss. As much as I really hope the Nets win this game, at this point, without Durant, even with the great moves that the Nets have made in the rotation, the 76ers are the better team. So I'm going to unfortunately say that's a loss. The Nets will then follow that up with another rematch game against the Memphis Grizzlies. This will be a back-to-back for the Nets. But, look, they should have beat the Grizzlies the first time they played them, and I really think they should beat the Grizzlies again. So, to me, that should be a win, even if it's a back-to-back on Friday. Then they play the Thunder at Barclays Center. This needs to be a win. The Thunder are a team that's in complete transition, rebuilding. They should definitely beat them. And then they've got the Nuggets, a team that has been considered one of the best teams in the Western Conference. As we know, they went to the Western Conference Finals last season, but have gotten off to a rough start, similar to the Nets. So that's going to be an interesting game. But overall, the next 4 games, I really think the Nets should go 3-1 again. Same thing as what I've always been saying. Should go 3-1, maybe go 2-2, but they've got to start getting over this 500, crap. They got to start establishing themselves as an above 500 team. So I really hope they go 3-1 the next 4 games and increase their record and get to, 7-6. I really hope that they're able to maybe shock me and beat the 76ers. The only thing they got after that is they have some what I would consider winnable games after that against the Knicks, the Magic, even though the Magic have looked very good as well. The Bucks not as much, but then the Cavaliers back-to-back and the Cavs have also looked good this year, but shouldn't be that good. I mean, the Nets need to start stringing some wins together to establish themselves as one of the better teams. So I'm expecting a 3-1 start. I'll tell you this right now, if the Nets, the 76ers do rest Joel Embiid or Ben Simmons or one of their star players, I expect the Nets to go 4-0. I really do, because if Embiid's not playing, I think the Nets are the better team, even without Kevin Durant. Because remember, this stretch of game was without Kevin Durant. He might be back in time for that Denver game, but I think the Nets should be able to beat them with what they've got going. So there you have it. Well, let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you think about what you've seen from the Nets so far, the drastic changes to the Nets rotation, Bruce Brown, Jared Allen finally starting. What you think is going to happen in the next couple games. If you think a 3-1, even without Kevin Durant, is reasonable, let me know what you guys think. And keep your eyes open to the next NetsBoy episode. I'm not sure when it will be. Just keep your eyes open. It might be after the Knicks game or something like that. I don't know. We'll see. You know me. It's whenever I can do them. So keep your eyes open. Until next time, this is NetsBoy. Hoping the Nets can keep this rolling and get their crap together. And signing off.